So thanks for joining us today. We're going to run through the Oracle Primavera Cloud tool, or what used to be called Prime. So if we say either of those, that's same software tool. I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm actually joining you today from Montreal. I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald, and doing the actual presentation of the software will be Marilyn Backstrom, joining from Edmonton. She's one of our implementation specialists and long history of using P3, SureTrack, and all the other scheduling tools from Primavera and Oracle. So she's going to run through the tool that we call OPC or Prime. Now let me talk about why you might want to look at this software tool instead of P6. So the most common and most prevalent, of course, is P6. That's the tool that is multi-user, multi-project, can be web, can be on-premise, a client version. That's the most common tool. But sometimes that tool maybe it gets a bad rap that it's overwhelming to use. That I don't think is true, but it does get a bad rap that maybe it's too hard to use. And we want something a little easier, a little lighter, maybe a little simpler to use. Something that might only be web-based, right? So easier for IT to take care of in terms of, it's only in the Oracle Cloud, so there's not much for IT to do. So those could be some of the reasons that you might want to look at this. Now, the good thing about this software is it is very similar, look and feel wise, to P6 ePPM, so what we would call P6 cloud, not cloud, but web, okay? Now that, very similar in many aspects, but it's been designed to allow the team to use a broader functionality. So it still is multi-user, it still is multi-project, so there's portfolio capability. So the key thing with this tool is it's also been designed to be deployed just in the web, in the internet, in the cloud in this case. So the communication aspects of it are quite good. So if you've got a diverse group that are not super users, super schedulers, maybe you've got a team from multiple companies, the communication in this system is quite good. And Marilyn will touch on the various different aspects of the tool that go beyond just scheduling. Okay, so we were just talking about that, and she's going to show you some of the scope and development functionality in the tool. So that helps broaden the communication. This allows us to document the requirements better. Okay, so in P6 we could use notes and things like that, but this gives us the capability of broadening it out so you can actually document the requirements a lot better. Now this makes it easier for the team to jump into a single platform. If you've got people who are used to maybe Microsoft Project, a little lighter, not as heavy duty scheduling, they might find this platform a little less intimidating than P6. Okay, so those are some of the reasons you might want to look at this tool. Also, it's a little cheaper price point as well. So it's only in the cloud. It's only in Oracle's cloud. That's the only way to get this tool. And as a result, the price point is a little cheaper. Okay, so that could be another important factor. If you've got a small budget for the software, this might be a better starting point for your team. Okay, so let me just give you a quick overview of how it works, and then Marilyn is really going to show it to you. So the tool has many different pieces to it, but it does have project planning, scheduling, so it's got the same CPM type functionality as what a P6 would have. We can have scenarios and we can have resources. Okay, so we've got the capability of resourcing it. The other thing that it has, and she's going to show you this, is the idea of lean scheduling. Work-face planning might be another way to talk about this. So we've got two distinct kind of layers to the way the tool works. And one of them is similar to steps. So if you've used P6 and you've used steps, the weakness with steps is there's no easy platform to show it to users and let them work with them. So this is a big component of what they did in OPC, is they took the steps functionality and made it more functional. They label it lean scheduling, and they've got more visual functionality in there. So Marilyn is going to show you how you can have lean scheduling deployed for the job site users to do all their details, framed inside of the activities within the WBS, within the project, and how these two can work with one another, allowing the scheduling team, project controls team to do what they need to, and then also giving an option to your field folks and your engineering folks to be able to do their more detailed updating. Okay, so that's a big thing of what she's going to show you in this webinar. Okay, so I already talked about that. And the lean scheduling has layers to it as well, different components to it, I guess is a better way to say it, with lists, task lists, work plans, the ability to do handoffs, and you can analyze where they went awry or where they were on track. Okay, so it's got that right built into it. So that's something that she's going to show you, and she's going to do a deep dive on those layers. Okay, did I miss anything, Marilyn, or should I hand it over?
I think you got everything.
Okay, here it comes. And then when she's done showing the software, as she goes through, feel free to ask questions if there's something that comes to mind you want to understand a little more, and we'll try and answer them as we go. Okay, it's all yours.
Okay, when we look at Oracle Primavera Cloud, they refer to it as OPC, but I'm sure you're going to catch me calling it Prime, so my apologies ahead of time. It's just going to happen. So when we look at scheduling in OPC, I've got a schedule in here, but you'll notice before we get right into the scheduling, just to give you a little bit of an overview of the software itself, you'll notice when we log in here, we've got a stack of icons down the left side. These are what they refer to as modules. So security-wise, you can give folks access to whatever module or modules, depending on what they're doing, that they require. So we're in the module for scheduling right now, and we will have a look at that. But I'd like to have a look also at the tasks module. That's where the lean scheduling piece sits. That's where the work plan, the task board, as some people call it, that's where that sits. We also have a scope module. So if you're in the process of planning your schedule, putting your schedule together, you can give the people that need it access to the scope piece, and then you can have other people or maybe the same people in the schedule module, and you also have the tasks module. Well, the tasks module normally would be something that, of course, field leads, people like that would have access to. So when you're looking at the schedule in OPC, it does look very similar to P6, as Nicole mentioned, more P6 web than client. You have all the basic functions that are in P6 web. I can put activities in, I can resource load them, I can cost load them, I can schedule it, I can create layouts. So the functionality is there. Now, if I have an XCR or an XML file that I want to bring into OPC, there is import functionality for both of those. And my apologies, my frog in my throat is back again. Tried to convince him to leave me this morning, but I guess he's too friendly. So when we talk about schedule, this is our activities window, and that's where our schedule sits. Now, you'll notice right away in the schedule window, we've got some little discussion bubbles is what I refer to them as, showing. You'll see discussion points in quite a few different places in the software. And that is, as Nicole mentioned, it gives you a lot of ability to put communication pieces to the people that you need some responses from, that kind of a scenario. So if we're looking at putting our schedule in, just before we get into doing some poll planning and things here, if I'm putting my schedule in and I'm getting the requirements together for the project, so you have certain elements that you need to cover off for the scope. Well, you can put them all in OPC. Now, if you are in a scenario where you're not planning to use the scope module, you don't necessarily have to. You can still have a schedule in OPC, but it's not going to be the whole picture, so to speak, as it would be if you use all the different modules. So scope items, you can break down what scope items do you need to cover off and track them. Now, when I've got the scope items in there, I can go in and start creating and tracking work packages. So you've got scope items you need to cover off a piece of work in your schedule. Now, that particular piece may require one work package. It may require a dozen or more. It depends on what the work is. So of course, you've got the ability to break that down by work package. So all of those different pieces you can put in here and you can track and you can report on them as well. Now, once I've got the work packages entered, so I'm going to plan my project. I've put all my scope items under the scope module in the scope items section. I've put work packages in, and usually the work packages are a bit of an ongoing scenario. While some of the work packages are being developed and put in the system so they can be tracked, etc. You also have scope assignments. So which work packages are covering off which scope assignments? That's what this is. So I've got a scope item that might require one work package. It might require multiple work packages. So that's all of this that this scope assignments actually is. So what you can do is you can go in and pick any of your work packages and assign them to the relevant scope items and track all of that information. So that's more some of your planning information, but it is information you're usually looking to track. How many work packages do we have left to create? How many scope items have work packages assigned? How many scope items do not have work packages assigned? Those kind of things are ongoing things when you're developing the whole execution plan for your project and, of course, your schedule. Now, it has a PBS structure available in it, so you can set up PBS breakdown. So you do have a number of different coding structures that can help you a lot with reporting and things like that, reporting and control of the work. Now we have baselines in scope. As soon as we go back to the activities tab, you're going to see baselines and WBS appear in more than one place. And that's just so that if you give somebody security access, for example, to scope, and they need to see WBS, you don't have to go and try and give them access to another module. So they've covered off different functional pieces to make it a little bit easier there. So you do have access to the WBS as well. And any of these pieces of the coding structure, you can go into them. And for example, this project is all set up. So I can go into the WBS and I can see all the work packages attached to activities that are attached to that WBS. So you can see where it makes roll up and reporting extremely easy. So all of that functionality is sitting in your scope section. You have baselines, and you can create baseline copies at different intervals. This particular file we're looking at already has a baseline attached. Now, you can, of course, we'll see a little later on, you can compare files in here as well too, and we'll talk about that a little later. Now, you'll notice at the bottom of the scope elements here, we've got changes. Well, we don't have any progress in our file yet, but you can log changes to scope items. Maybe something's been descoped, maybe something's been added, and because it's been added, you need another work package. All of those elements are trackable in here. So when I go and create all of these different pieces of information, so if I've got my scope items created, the work packages are created, the assignments are done, so the items and the work packages have that connection, I can go back into my schedule and I can see pieces of that information right in the schedule. So it does connect those two together. Although the only thing I want to make clear there is if you're not going to use the scope section, you can still create the project. So if I go into the schedule, this is just back where we were before, back in the activities. This is like you would see in P6 for P6 users, similar. Now, if I look at the information in the general tab, for example, I've got WBS is showing, work package is showing. So those pieces that we were looking at in scope are directly reflected in the elements of your schedule. So rolling up reporting, filtering on different pieces that are pertaining to WBS or work package is extremely easy. So before we get into actually updating here, let's have a look at the task module. Now, when we go into the task module, this is where the lean scheduling happens, or field scheduling, or working with the task board. All of those different nomenclature basically for the same thing. Because what you can do in the work plan, I've got the list of activities down the left side. Now you can choose to display that or not to display it. For what we're doing, it makes it easier if you can actually see the reference to the activities. Now, what is lean scheduling all about? What you're looking to be able to do is I've got some activities here, and you'll notice I've got a found work one here, well damage. There's two tasks underneath that. So this is the activity in the schedule that covers the well damage. But the lead who is looking after making sure that well damage gets repaired, inspected, all of that good stuff, has it split into two pieces because the weld repair is going to happen by one contractor, subcontractor, I should say. The inspection is happening from another subcontractor is looking after that. Now, that's what this color coding in this section is. All of these gray ones are your activities from your schedule. All of these color-coded elements underneath these are tasks. So we've added those tasks. If I need another task, very easy to go and put it in. All I have to do is go and select the activity I want to add the task for. This big plus sign that shows up here, click plus, it adds a task, and I just fill in the details. Now, once I fill in the details, or if you want to drag and drop it, you can do that first. You can see the mouse turn to the hand. I can just drag it and drop it, and we'll do that in a minute. But if I'm looking at these activities, I could be out in the field, I could be in a meeting in one of the trailers, that kind of thing. And we're all looking at this particular work plan or task board. So you may be looking at the next couple of days, you may be looking at the next week. It depends a lot on the project that you're on. But what am I going to do with these tasks? Well, there's a few things inside the tasks to be aware of. And let's have a look at this install scaffolding one. So I'm just going to double click on this. And these dates are a little behind now, but you can get the idea of what you're able to do here. what you have here is completion dates and completion dates that you're asking for commitments on. So if I go into this activity, this task, sorry, install scaffolding. Well, this is the first task under my install scaffolding activity. I've got 2 contractors looking after that work. So I can tell here who the company is, and I can tell what activity it belongs to. Now, if I come down to the bottom here, I have proposed due date, which was accepted on this one, completed date. So this task is actually complete. But just to show you some of the things that are in here, I've got some code fields I can fill out here, but I also have commitments. So what you do is have your discussion. You decide on when are these tasks going to be completed, whichever ones you're in charge of, the next subcontractor and whoever is leading the meeting is going to coordinate that, because you're looking to agree on dates and commit to them. So these ones have commitments because this one is already complete. You also can track handoffs. So if you have a task, you may be wondering, okay, this is going to be a struggle to get this task done by the end of the shift. Who am I impacting if I don't get it done? Well, that's what your handoffs are going to show you. So in this case, there is another install scaffolding task that is start with it. But in some cases, you're going to have them flowing across a couple shifts or maybe more, that kind of scenario. And we'll look at handoffs a little bit more as we go on. They do have a graphic display of it, which a lot of people like a little bit better. But this gives you a reference to it as well. Now you can put in constraints. This one doesn't have any. So, and here, as we were saying, there is a lot of room for communication. So if there was something to do with one of these tasks that I needed to post a comment about, I can do it right here. So you've got a lot of different information in that particular task. So if I'm going along and I've got a couple of tasks completed, I've got some are not complete. So you can see if I hover over some of these icons, this checkbox in the circle at the bottom is telling me these 2 scaffolding ones are complete. If I look above, these activities are not complete. So what happens if I need to go in and complete one of them? It's actually very easy. And you can do the updates from this screen, or you can do them from a couple other screens that I'll show you in just a second. But if I wanted to reflect that a task was finished in this screen, all I really need to do is, if I want this weld repair, you'll see it doesn't have a completed date. If I went in and click this, I can do it there, or I can go into the details and I can actually put the completed date right here and say it's completed. So if that particular one did finish July the 3rd, you could go in and put the date in there and reflect it as being complete. But the other side of the coin here is what happens if what we thought was going to play out isn't actually going to play out and we need to change some of this around. Well, if I have activities, for example, shut down 2 OTSGs, if I needed to reorder these for some reason, I can just drag and drop them if I need to. But I can also create a situation, and you'll see where it jumped sideways here. Depending on what you're doing, you may be generating a condition where these activities, these tasks are going to end past where the activity in the schedule ends. And that's basically what you're seeing here. And you can see how easy it is to grab and move these particular elements around. So that's exactly what the lean scheduling piece is basically all about, is, okay, what can we do to streamline what we're doing for the next, maybe it's a shift, maybe it's a week, maybe it's depending on how often you do it. This gives you a very visual picture of what's going on. So if, for example, something in an activity required another contractor to be brought in, create a new activity task, put it in the mix, get things in the order that you need them in, with the discussions of everybody else that is involved right there. Now, once you decide how something is going to play out, in other words, your planned execution for it, then the scheduler can see that information in the schedule. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to take every update, because one thing I want to be very clear on here, because for the schedulers in the room, you're probably going, you mean they update the tasks and it automatically changes my schedule? No, it doesn't. What it does is gives you the visibility to see what they changed, and then you can work it from there. If it's something that seems reasonable, you can put the update into the actual schedule activities. If it's something you need to ask questions to, it has not hammered your schedule, and you don't have to go in and find out what's suddenly, for example, made your schedule go out 3 days, that type of scenario. So you'll see their updates, but you're in charge of whether it actually updates the activity or not. So if I needed to move this particular shutdown out, and we found out in discussions, okay, this last task is not going to finish on the 7th like we thought. It's going to go to the 8th because we found out something else has to happen in the middle here. Well, I can grab this new task I created and I can put it in this particular space. Now, depending on what it is that needs to happen here, I could go in and, for our purposes, whoops, added work, except I should spell added properly. Oops, there we go. I'm just going to label it very generically here, but you can add information in if you need to here. Now, what this is showing me is because I've added this piece in here, that's the reason this one was moved out. That's fine, but I've just exceeded the end date of that activity. And we'll have a look and see where that shows up back in the activity tab. So you can go in and you can look at all of these different activities, depending on which ones belong to the company that you're working for. If you're a subcontractor, if you're the owner and you're looking after the whole schedule, you've got all of it in here as well. Now, before we leave this particular screen, there's a couple things I want you to be aware of. Now, if I was looking at all of these little icons, if I hover over them, they give me a lot of good information about that task in the whole work plan. However, this is a small demo schedule. It's just a few activities. It's just a few tasks. If I'm dealing with a large number, this could get slightly overwhelming. Well, the software is going to look after some of that for you as well. So if I go up in the work plan screen to the top right, task summary, you've got a little heart-shaped icon here. If I click on task summary, it gives you the summary. Now you can see we've got a large number overdue. That's because this was scheduled to start the 3rd of July, but it is tracking all these different pieces of information. And you can click the little arrow at the side to open up any of these. Now, if I look down here, maybe this particular activity that is tracking outside the activity dates, in other words, this end date on that activity is not going to happen according to what these tasks are saying. If I want to know that I've looked at all of those, planned outside activity dates, click the arrow, and I just click there. It's going to take me to that task. For us, of course, we could just go there anyways because we could actually see it on our screen. But there is a lot of different information in here that they've put some built-in, what I would call, monitoring for you, which does make things easier because you don't have to create a whole bunch of layouts, for example, that are going to go in and give you all that information here and have to go through a layout for each one to see it. It's all there, so you can just go straight there. So if I've gone in and I've done the updates that I wanted to do, then I can also, while I'm in there, if I need to, depending on what's happening, you've got another tab here that is handoffs. Now, in the handoffs, this is where you're tagging. This is all tasks. These are not the activities from the schedule. These are all the tasks you put under the activities. But how do they flow? That is what these handoffs are. Now, you'll notice that in a lot of cases here, these are all the same company, which is one scenario. However, if I go down here a little bit, I've got one that is start to start, but these are two separate companies. So you can very easily see if I had, for example, tasks where the first task is one company, second one is another company, third one is yet a third company, and something is going to be delayed here. It gives a bird's eye view for one. What company, who am I impacting here? Because there's going to have to be some conversations, clearly, that's going to have to go on about that as well. Now, you also do have access to the same tabs, same pieces of information from the handoff screen as you did from the work plan. Now, I have a task list in here. I did mention that you can do updates in the work plan, but you also have the task list. So if I needed to do updates in the task list, I can definitely come in here and do whatever updates I need to as far as any of the information to do with the tasks. If you're looking to update tasks, and tasks are usually fairly short in the duration of them. So you may be coming in and it may be a case that your crew has finished 15 in one shift. And you're probably thinking, okay, if I have to go and click through the work plan and I have to get to task, to task, to task, to task, that's a little tedious. Well, you can always come into the task list. And if you have certain activities, now you can go by the ID, maybe you're going by the name, but if you go down this complete column, to complete them, all you have to do is click in here and it'll change from not complete to completed. So it's very, very easy to update. You've got a reference to the company available as well who is looking after that particular task. And you also have state icons. Now, these particular icons, same idea as what was in the work plan. You need to hover over them to see what is actually in them. And you'll notice what these two are telling us. And we're going to look at this one in a second when we go to the activities. Install scaffolding. Task complete, activity not complete. So the two tasks have been completed, activities not complete. Shut down OTSG, activity is outside the dates. So that information is tagged in this particular state column. Now, you do have the ability to flag tasks as well, depending on how you're doing your communications, how you're doing different basically management type of procedures. But you have a lot of different information available, as well as this communication bubble that I talked about. Now you'll see we've got one that's dark here. And that's because there is already a comment in there. So you can see at a glance as well if there's anything in there or not. So if I've looked at my task list and I've done my updates, now do I need to go and adjust any constraints, add any constraints, anything like that? If I do need to, this is the window I would use. So this is all to do with the tasks. This is your lean scheduling, and you can just stick right in the work plan if you find that works easier. You have a couple other display scenarios here that can help you speed up updates, give you some other options of slicing and dicing information, the views that you want to look at. Now, you've got the constraints, and there's another one I want you to be aware of, and this again is part of the task module. So this is analyzing the task information. Now, this is some out-of-the-box analysis graphs that are included. So for example, project plan % complete, and this is all the task information. So reasons for missed commitments. So in the tasks, we talked about committing to dates. If the subcontractor doesn't make the date, they need to give you a reason why it was missed and then recommit to whatever date it's going to have with it. So there's a lot of functionality in this task module. That information I mentioned goes to the activities in the schedule module, but it's not going to automatically update your schedule, because that's one thing I find being in the scheduling chair for many, many years myself. I can totally understand it. Many people get really, really antsy if you tell them, okay, we're going to update the tasks, then we're going to go over to the schedule. The assumption seems to be that whatever updates are in those tasks are just going to hit the schedule, and you really don't want that, because you want to know when there's some changes going to your schedule, what is it actually doing? So what you can do here, now if I look at the shutdown to OTSGs, that's the one that we had said in the work plan. It's cruising outside the dates for this activity. Well, if I look at tasks here, it's giving me a heads up. I've got that red icon at the side, and it's saying review the tasks detail window for additional task status details. But before I even did that, I can go to tasks, and I've got the icons here. So I can hover over them and see what they're all about. And this is the one is tagged outside the dates. I can see the status, committed, pending, and the dates. So, and I just clicked it to resort it. So you can see 5th is committed, 6th was pending, and on down the line. But you can see this July the 8th is outside what the dates were on that activity. But if I go back to status, you'll notice my activity is not yet started and it still ends the 7th. So I make the decision, which updates am I going to put in? Now you can set it to go from the 5th to the 8th, that's fine, but it gives you the warning and you make the decision. So that's one thing I just want everybody to be aware of, because I've had people say, wouldn't want to use that. I don't want those tasks updating my schedule when I really don't understand what they put in the tasks. It gives you very clear messages here. Now, scope assignments, it tells you what these activities, what scope assignments they're connected to. You have the logic in here, and you have the resource assignments. So any of these pieces, let's look at the install scaffolding. That's the other one that it was giving us a little bit of a warning about, because if we look at this task detail window, review the task detail window, it's warning us something is a little off. So if we look at this, these two are completed, but if I go to the status tab, this activity isn't completed. Again, you make the decision if you're going to incorporate those updates or not. So if I go into the tasks, I've got 3rd of July, those were both finished. So I can go into status and I can say, yeah, beginning of shift the 3rd, end of shift the 3rd, that one's done. I'm finished. I know it aligns with the tasks. I don't have to ask any questions. That part's done. So if there was some questions you wanted to ask, for example, on this activity that was updated, but the plan is it's actually going to go later than it should have, you can start the activity and you could leave it ending on the 7th and ask the question, or if you have time, find out the answer before you do your updates, whatever it is you need to do. Now in the tasks, see this goes 5th to the 8th now. So if this is real, and I'm assuming that the task wouldn't be changed unless it is, if you're okay with putting it in, you can just go in and you can say it's going from the 5th to the 8th. So I could say the 5th, and I can go in and change this to the 8th. So you can see how easy it is to refer back to the field updates that you got and actually go in and do the updates extremely quickly. Now, once we've finished our updates, you've got much the same functionality as you would find in, as Nicole mentioned, P6 Web. You've got schedule here. So I could click to schedule, and you've got the same type of settings that you would see in client or web, really. And I can just reschedule it. So if I was looking to do the updates, excuse me, if I was looking to do the updates and I needed to reschedule, I can go in and I can reschedule. Now, as far as the layouts go, this particular project has a baseline, and similar to web, you can create the layouts that you want as well. So I can just change layouts. Now I see the project and the baseline. So if I wanted to reschedule that, and we're not on the 3rd anymore, and I'm rescheduling to, for example, the 5th, say, okay, schedule now, it's going to go through and reschedule it and show you the effects of it. And you can see it gives you the report as well. I won't go through the log, but it does have the log. And it's showing you on the screen baseline versus where it is now. So that was a little bit of kind of off the wall updates. You would clearly hope you have a few more in there, but you can see that the scheduling functionality in here does carry the basic scheduling pieces, including resource assignments. So I can look at resource assignments, but I can also look at the resource usage. So here's project, and I can click resource as well. And you can generate stacked histograms. You can use the role usage as well. This particular demo file doesn't have a lot of roles in there, but you can do the role usage as well. So it does have the scheduling functionality that you're used to, for example, in P6 Web. Slight differences here and there, but for the most part, the basics are all there. Plus you have your scope piece and you have your work plan piece. So it's very easy to get the updates from the field, see what they look like against your activities in the schedule. And if there's something you need to question, there's a lot of communication bubbles, or you can always do it old school and call them. So on that note, I see the time here, so I will pass it back to Nicole.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mary Lynn. Let me just run through a few questions that were put in the question room. Can I export projects from OPC to P6? Yes, the answer is yes. Mary Lynn, I don't know if it's easy to show where that's done.
Are you still seeing my screen? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't take back. Yeah.
So if we go to all projects, you've got import export. So actions, import from P6, export to P6. So you can import from P6, XML and XCR, and I can go to export and I can export a compressed XML as well.
Okay. Now, the second part of that question, of course, is how can items like scope, assignments, PBS, etc., be transferred? Now, of course, if there's no home for those items in P6, there's nowhere for them to go. So it won't take those pieces into P6. If that's super important, I guess, Mary Lynn, what could you do? Copy and paste it into a notebook or some?
You can actually export most of those pieces.
Yeah.
So you can export them to
Excel.
Most of them go to Excel. Yes, as just kind of a basic export.
Yeah. but they're not flowing into P6 because
Oh,
there's
no.
no home for them. So that's that first question. And that was the only question so far. So, okay, perfect. Thank you. I just thought since you're in, let's stay in and let's
Oh, for
run
sure.
through it.
I just wasn't quite sure whether my screen was still
Yeah.
showing or not. So,
Okay, I'll take it back now.
okay.
There is another question in
Oh, in the chat?
in the unanswered section. Yes.
Oh, okay, okay. I will take it back, and if I have to give it back to Mary Lynn, I will put it back. Okay, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Can we have 1 dB where P6 and OPC are connected to, so the scheduler can do the necessary scheduling works, but the lead supervisors work on OPC to the next level? Yes, yeah, of course. That's one of the potential ideas, absolutely. So you would essentially go to the activity in P6, and then you could do the tasks up in OPC. And then when you export it, right, from OPC, you're going to get those tasks. There is a place for the tasks to live inside of P6. So yeah, it's definitely possible. Did I miss anything there, Mary Lynn?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
haven't got P6 open right at the moment, or I would show the tab, but I don't have it.
Yeah. So I just want to be a little clear on this, though. It's not technically all in one database. P6 has its own database, and OPC has its own database. They're two separate databases, if you will, but they can talk to each other with importing and exporting. There is also the capability to do integrations to each of the tools, because they do have APIs. So those are the different options. So I'm not sure if I answered or not, but hopefully that answers that question. Okay, so thanks, Marilyn, for running through the way that OPC works. You know, it's got some nice features that could be beneficial for you. Our CAPS tool, which is an updating tool, does let you see the steps in the list, and does also give you the option to allow your leads to do the updating of the steps and have it go into P6. Okay, so that's another alternate. It's an updating view of the steps. So it's not a full-blown GUI with all this moving around like we have in OPC, but it could also be another option if you really want P6, but you just want a bit more updating done by the outside, the leads supervisors, and you want to use steps for that. Okay, so that's another option, and we built that for this reason, and we built it way before OPC was put together. So that's another option to consider. Again, it depends what you're looking for, right? Okay, so I think some of the benefits of this tool, I think she showed you quite heavily and appropriately that the collaboration is bigger with this tool, okay? With the tasks, with the scopes, this broadens out what you can do with your schedule and broadens out the team, okay? So that's a big thing. It's pretty easy to use. You saw there's not a lot of screens to learn. It's very simple, and I think that's something that Oracle's done well in their web apps. They've kept them pretty simple to work with. There's not a lot of icons, you know, there's just a handful, and everything you need to know how to do are in those actions or in the layout widget. And so I think they've done a good job of making that quite streamlined and easy to use. The potential there now for the management, there's a potential for more visibility, which is important, so that you've got your KPIs and you can track exactly what's happening. So that's something that task level or the lean scheduling can bring to the table. It's a bit more visibility and acknowledgement as to why you didn't meet a target Okay, so that's important. And it's important to have it as you go. Okay. I worked in claims for the first 5 years after my engineering school, and as Emerald, we've done many claims, and the ability to tackle problems as they come up quickly and document them is really important. So you want to definitely take advantage of those capabilities in the tool. And we touched on the potential for the integrations, as we just talked about, and the ability to get your projects completed quickly because you've got that transparency up in the OPC tool is worthwhile to explore. Okay, so I don't see any additional questions. I'm in the unanswered, and so there may not be any more at this time. Not a problem. If there are some that come up after, just reach out to Mary Lynn, and she'll tackle them with you. So thanks for spending the last just about an hour with us. Hopefully you saw something enlightening, interesting, potential for your projects and your team. And hopefully we can help you explore them further. As I mentioned, this is one tool that we work with, but I mentioned some of the tools that we've developed as Emerald, and we've got several that support P6 and the P6 platform, and we can support the OPC platform as well. So just take a look at our webinar schedule. We probably have a little bit of a break here for the next few weeks with it being summer, but it'll be back in full swing in September, and you can look at our website at our different tools there. So here's some info if you do want to ask some questions. So we've got Mary Lynn's info there, and we've got Donna's info in the Philippines as well. If she's closer to you, that might be a better way to reach out. So I'll stop the recording here.